All right. All right. So what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm good. I'm good, man. Yeah.
Right.
First, yeah.
So, where are you from again? Pennsylvania?
Yep. I'm from Pennsylvania, about an hour north of Philly. Uh, Lehigh Valley.
Okay. You grew up in Pennsylvania or
Yeah.
moved there?
Yep. I did. I pretty much lived in all around Eastern Pennsylvania. My whole life. Uh, uh, Grew up poor north of here in a little town called Lehighton. And then just Slatington, Bethlehem, and met my wife online, and we moved to Boyertown, and now we're in Coopersburg, PA. So all
There's from my understanding, there's a lot of small counties or what I guess or whatever y'all call them up there. James Carville said I heard him, heard him say one time. There's a there's Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, and Alabama in the middle.
yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. I, you know the
He
the
said that's the way to describe Pennsylvania. Was, yeah. I
yeah
thought that was pretty funny.
yeah the whole state is not to get political or anything, but the whole state, even though it's been traditionally the past 20 plus years has been a blue state, the whole state is red.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. I mean,
and
I
and yet,
watch all that on the map. Yeah. You'll have those
yeah,
two, three counties right there and just wait for
but
them to report. Yeah.
but yet, you have Philly and Pittsburgh and a little bit of Scranton, but other than that, that's about it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, on the left and right, and you're looking at all the red filling. And yeah, I just thought that it was always funny when Carville put it that way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
He's a pretty funny guy. So you've written, you said some children's books on the Civil War?
Yeah, actually, I um I've been writing a uh a adult fiction story of the Civil War for like 10 years now. Um and I took a break because that old saying, see a need, fill a need. And I was in Gettysburg about 2.5 years ago, and I was in the visitor center, and I saw all these authors lined up in their tables on their tables, and had their books lined up and everything, and I look around, and I'm like, wait a minute, you know, all these old guys have old even older guys on their books, and yet I'm looking around and I see nothing but kids everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, wow. um, and I was like, wow, there's no children's books around here, and I've loved history since the fifth grade, and even before then, to be honest with you. um, you know uh, and I'm just a diehard history enthusiast all around, from the Roman Empire to Henry V to the American Civil War, and so on and so forth. But the American Civil War always has a really a special place in my heart because uh, you know I don't like talking about myself. I like talking about the subject matter that we're all enthusiastic about, and that's why I really like your forum, the Killer Angels, because it's a place where people can just check themselves and their agenda and their political affiliation and everything at the door, and just let's talk about what's most interesting. Everybody knows the Civil War had um, a lot of political turmoil and the causes, and such, and they're ugly. I mean, but they need to be taught, and everything. But there's so much more in regards to the Civil War than just slavery and so much more. And Anyway, I wanted to write something for kids, because you can write all the books you want nowadays, and most adults, especially a lot that we know in the forum, they just have their way, and that's cool.
Yeah.
It's just there. You can't break that barrier. Sometimes you can't even reason. You can't. I could say, I'm a pro Union guy myself, but my favorite general by far is Lee, and that alone gets me in the doghouse, and so much judgment in regards to so many people so fast to call me names and this and that or impugn me in some way, and I'm like, you know, yeah,
Why is Lee your favorite general?
because he is without a doubt the most complex personality of the Civil War.
How so?
He's the most fascinating to study. He was the most at war with himself. He was nothing against the Confederacy, but he certainly wasn't a Confederate. He was a Virginian. He just, a lot of people could say he neglected the Confederacy, and we could go in those conversations in regards to, him taking a good amount of the lack of what they had in the Eastern Theater, and the Western troops, holy smokes, they had it bad. But but anyway, I mean, Lee cared about Virginia, and he cared about his, Southern independence. He cared about the Union probably more than most things, and he was really just a very complex personality. Kind of reminded me of like George Washington in a lot of ways, and I see a lot of, I probably feel a lot of diehard Union guys watching this, shaking their heads right now, like, oh my gosh, this guy is just he believes in some cult of Lee and myth of Lee, and you know what, I'm no myth follower, I'm no cult follower. I give Lee and I give the devil their due, um, uh, I am very critical of Lee in regards to a lot of things. I bash him on the 7 Days battle a lot because he should have took his time on it, instead of attacking rapidly and going through 20,000 men that he could not afford, which plagued him later. That he could have invaded Maryland with more than 38,000 men. And the wow, I mean, Antietam, that changed everything. The international recognition of the Confederacy, just completely the possibility of any type of foreign affairs or anything went away after Antietam, and that all derived from the 7 Days, even prior to the Second Bull Run.
Do you find that people, when you start talking about the myth of Lee, or I've heard people that too, Marble Man, do you find that there has now been a attempt to, I don't want to say rewrite history, but to downplay his technical abilities on the battlefield?
Yeah, I absolutely. When I learned history when I was younger, they would have everything divvied up, like the battles. Nowadays, the revisionists, if we want to call them that, where they have tunnel vision and they want to just simply get lazy history. They want to just say, for example, the Overland Campaign, the Wilderness was inconclusive.
Mm-hmm.
The Spotsylvania was inconclusive. Cold Harbor, North Ann, which were clearly decisive battle victories, um, were inconclusive. And all what they really cared about was, Five Forks and the aftermath of the withdrawal of the 35 miles or so of Confederate lines of Petersburg. That is lazy history. That's like me saying, you know what? The 7 Days battle, that campaign was completely all Lee. No, 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 it wasn't. Malvern Hill happened, and it was devastating to Lee. It was horrible to Lee. But those same people love to have their cake and eat it too. So they'll definitely talk about Malvern Hill and discount, But if you do that, if you want to talk about Malvern Hill and a lot of other things in regards to actually dissecting a campaign day by day, like the first day of Gettysburg was clearly a Confederate victory. The 1st and the 11th were, especially the 11th, was flanked by Early's entire division and was very much decimated, and the first day was a victory, but you can't say that. You're like, whoa, there was no victory and this and that. And, come on. The South took a little over 2,000 prisoners on the first day of Gettysburg. That was a pretty good victory.
Yeah, they forget that the first reports coming out of Gettysburg that was going back to both Washington and to Richmond was of a massive Confederate victory on Northern soil. Was the first reports that Jefferson Davis and Lincoln received.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously the second day was just oof. I mean, they got stopped in their, their tracks and such, and the third day was oof, wow, that was obviously what it was. But if you just try to give the devil their due and just respect when it's due, like Cold Harbor and North Ann and even the Wilderness, I mean, Lee lost, to, I don't know, about 10,000 men or so in the Wilderness, and Grant lost well over 15,000 or so, or something like that.
He lost closer to 18,000. It was almost It was pretty bad. I mean,
wow, and that goes to show you, it was a tactical victory for Lee, and there's nothing wrong with pointing that out. Grant, I have so much respect for the Bulldog, as I call him, Grant. He doesn't let go, and it's like you're irrational. People treat you like you're irrational if you try to show respect to both sides. And that's why I wanted to write the book that I did in regards to proving that there was battles won on both sides, and it depicts both Lee and Grant, I believe, very fairly. And I wrote it not only for kids but for adults too. There's tons and tons of good stuff, actual quotes, and a lot of facts. Nothing's really distorted in regards to how it's presented. It's presented very differently. When I was a kid, when I read about Lee and Grant, I considered them a. Did I lose you?
No, I'm still here.
Oh, okay.
No, keep going.
Okay.
I just said I had a text message come in that I had to answer.
Okay. I'm seeing something on your phone. I'm like, what the heck? All right. No worries. So I'm seeing. Anyway, I depict both Grant and Lee as superheroes, and my wife, actually, it was her idea, because she was like, hey, at the time of just starting the project, the Marvel Infinity Wars. Did you see that?
No, I didn't. I never got to see that.
Okay, the Infinity Wars were on, and anyway, that was like the hottest thing, happening. And she's like, "What's really, And she's like, "Ooh, a Civil War book for kids." Ooh, and I was like, "Hey, yeah, I think it would be great, Civil War book for kids." And she goes, "Well, couldn't you make it like they're superheroes?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, that would be like a laughing stock." Like, oh. And then I was like, oh, the gears started turning. I'm like, wait a minute. I always thought of them as superheroes of their time, so why not? And anyway, it worked out. So you have Lee and Grant battling each other, like, throughout. Actually, it starts out. It starts out in 1862, where Lee is given the reins, so to speak, at 7 Days Battle. because I wanted it to be a narrative that follows Lee and Grant, and so it has Lee beating up Mac, and then beating up Pope, and then beating up um, Burnside, and then it goes to the Western Theater, and it has great depictions of Grant as a superhero, and he does his thing on Fort Donelson, and and so on and so on, and it beats Bragg up at Shiloh, and all kinds of things. And then it goes back and forth, Eastern Theater and Western Theater. And then 1864 happens, and then Lee and Grant battle each other, and that really it's good stuff. It's good for kids that get learn the battles, and it's fun. It's also written as a comic book, so I have little bubbles above their face, so with like cool one-liners, So yeah.
What's the name of the book again?
Civil War Superheroes. And it's called Civil War Superheroes Army Commanders Collide. And
okay.
Yeah, and the best way to look it up, if on Amazon, just type in the word Falcaro, which is my last name, Falcaro, Falcaro, and it will come right up. It's one of the first books that pop up. Civil War Superheroes, Army Commanders Collide, and the subtitle is on purpose. Army Commanders Collide, because it's Lee and Grant, and also I'm working on another Civil War Superheroes, and I don't want to go into detail because it's like 14 months away yet. It's going to take a long time, but it's Showdown at Gettysburg. So
sounds like a good one.
That would be cool. That would be really cool.
You said you had another novel you've been working on for 10 years. Are you still working on that one too, or did I miss that? You combine the children's book with it?
No, I am working on that. I'm not going to be done with that for a long time, because it's something I wanted to write since I was a kid, and it's all about a lot of lead up to a single action at Gettysburg, and it'll be cool. Hopefully, something comes of it. I have a lot of characters, a lot of moving parts in it, and it's a lot to write. It's a work in progress. That is a very long work in progress.
Do you find difficult? I mean, because I try to play around with some stories on there, like with Richmond Grad. Do you ever find it difficult that you're kind of or you're forcing yourself when you're writing, and it's like, man, this doesn't feel right. This whole segment here, it doesn't flow, or do you ever have that feeling?
Yeah. I had that a number of times, in regards to the children's book that I put out. I kind of like rewrote a lot of parts. I actually purposely took out my favorite battle at Antietam, because I didn't include my own favorite battle, because I had a buildup of Lee defeating people, and then Grant defeating people, and I really wanted it to be a really good shock value later in the book, when Lee finally gets stumped at Gettysburg. And I took out Antietam, which I hope to do a whole book on, like for kids and stuff, because I think Antietam was really the true turning point of the war. But that's a whole different debate. But I took out that because it just didn't flow right. Gettysburg wasn't from a learning standpoint, like, and the build up, like, he already got stumped at Antietam. So I kind of, since, I'm not including so many other battles like Stones River and so many others, I was like, you know what, yeah,
that's why I thought Gods and Generals was such a the book and the movie, just covered it was trying to cover 2 years of that war, and you're not even touching the Western theater, and I mean, not to mention the trans Mississippi, and then then you've got the Pacific Theater, which there wasn't a lot going on, but you still had a little bit, and then the Sun Belt Theater. So I mean, there was so much more going on than just those few counties there in Virginia.
I felt really bad for Gods and Generals because it tried to cover way too much.
It was just way too. I mean, you could make. I mean, it was just it was just what.
Yeah.
Each one of the battles you could have made a whole movie on.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
oh yeah. Yeah.
I mean, even covering one battle, sometimes is too much for one movie. Like with Gettysburg, you're caught up, and I love the movie, but here you are caught up on day 2 at Little Round Top that wasn't even a military objective at the outset, and you don't even talk about the peach orchard, the wheat field, actually Cemetery Ridge. You just got a few units there, so
and that's the thing. Even though the movie Gettysburg was based on the novel Killer Angels and such, the movie itself, when you're watching that as a kid and an adult and stuff, probably Gettysburg probably did more for generating interest of the Civil War than anything else. Maybe the Ken's Bird series maybe rivaled it, but even Gettysburg, like you just said, couldn't cover most of the battle. There's so much more.
Yeah, it didn't totally.
I mean, like General Wright's brigade, going, towards the crest of the on day 2 wasn't even covered. And like the first Minnesota,
Yes.
I mean, wow, that's like the best regiment of the Civil War. That story, I mean, wow, if they didn't get sacrificed the way they did, I mean,
none of Culp's Hill was even mentioned in the movie.
Yeah. And like General Greene, I mean, wow. I mean, that guy, talk about one of the better generals of Gettysburg, and yet, he's not even mentioned, and it's a bummer, Yeah.
Yeah. I've watched. To touch on something else one more time was mentioning on. I wonder why there's been this trying to take Lee down, so to speak, that I've noticed.
Because we have this point. Yeah. We chatted about this, and I think it's this. I think it's this this partisan poison. I think partisanship is poison. The one thing that I've noticed, and I don't mean to get political, but nowadays people can't help themselves by throwing these conservative memes, these liberal memes, and bashing conservatives, bashing liberals, back and forth, vilifying, and their side has to be completely correct. Their side has to be the view of the other person. And there's activist mindset on both sides, either the religious right, where they condemn and or as Bill Maher says it, because I'm a big fan of Bill Maher.
Bill Maher.
Yeah, I do. I know you probably don't like him, but
no, I do. I love Bill Maher.
Yeah, Bill Maher. Yeah, Bill Maher. He's a crazy liberal.
Yeah, I think he's hilarious.
Yeah, he's a crazy liberal like me, but at the same time he checks the woke people and and he does not like political correctness, because George Carlin kind of said it best.
Oh, I love George Carlin.
Yeah, political correctness is fascism disguised as manners. And anyway, I think back to Lee really quick. That I think it is to make him a boogeyman, like the Southerners try to do with Sherman. I think a lot of people that are pro-union try to make Lee a boogeyman in regards to, they're like, oh man, this guy, he's like,
Do
oh
you find that they've made him almost, I'm trying to say this not in a way that they've almost turned him into a Christ-like figure that he's had to bear the whole burden of the war carried on his shoulders now.
yeah,
It's so
I just don't think that they like someone who is so good, that's praised by Winston Churchill, Dwight Eisenhower, and so many others. But yet that he was on a different side than they are. And if they and they have to like be against him. A lot of people that disagree with each other nowadays have to learn how to kind of, we all do, including myself. We all have to learn how to not only tolerate but accept different points of view and different sides. They were all Americans, so we don't have these sides. Republicans and Democrats and conservatives and liberals, they're not they're not enemies. We're not on different sides. I guess the Confederates and the Union were on different sides,
probably.
but obviously they were on different sides. But if Grant, I say in my book, Civil War Superheroes, one of my favorite lines that I thought of as a kid, and I still believe to this day, when I see somebody completely intolerant of a liberal, or completely intolerant of a Confederate, and this and that, I say to them, I'm like, to myself, because people are so fiery nowadays. If Grant can forgive when so many people wanted harshness, he chose to heal. And if he can not only forgive, but accept a man that he went to war with, and the Southerners are now our fellow countrymen, and then went on to say, let us have peace. If he can do that to Lee and an entire people that he went to war with, your reasons are invalid. Why you can't, you know, yeah.
Thank you for putting it that way.
Yeah.
All right. So you said the name of your book was Superhero or Civil War Superheroes.
Yeah.
How'd it go?
Yep. Civil War Superheroes. I hope I don't come across a little bit. A few people say it's I came across a little bit too biased towards Grant, but everybody has a different perspective, I think both sides. The point is, both sides were Americans, and there's so much more to the Civil War to learn, and you got to make it fun. History has to be fun to learn, and I hope maybe a few people listening are nice enough to buy it, and hopefully maybe, just maybe, even give me like 5 stars on Amazon or something. You know how hard it is to get somebody to write you a good review?
It is.
It's
All right.
impossible.
Well, there we have it. Got the book on Amazon, and everybody look it up, and we'll make sure we get that thing happen.
All right, it was great talking to you, man.
Man, you too. So let me